7 a game. He's got 35 now. Oh, no. You gotta go. This is about as...
You're not the Lone Ranger in that regard. Luka has done this to many teams this year. What?
I'm getting ready to leave, man.
No, you got to stay. You need to stay. You don't want to leave.
Welcome to Inside The Mavs, the official Mavericks podcast of 97.1 The Freak. I'm your host, Kevin Gray, Mavericks pre- and post-game host on the Dallas Mavericks Radio Network. Appreciate you joining me here for the latest episode here on my YouTube channel at Kevin Gray Sports. Be sure and like and comment on the video, and you can download and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast for free. Give it a 5-star rating and write a review for it while you're there. You can follow me on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports. Luka Doncic went nuts against the Houston Rockets. As you can see, I'm in the 97.1 The Freak studios as the Dallas Mavericks get the 125-107 win over the Houston Rockets to get to 7 consecutive wins. Now a season high, 16 games above 500 at 45-29. Now 23-14 on the road, thanks to Luka Doncic dropping 47 points, tying a career high with 9 3-pointers, scoring 32 of those 47 points in the first half alone, as Luka Doncic set the tone for the Dallas Mavericks to be able to put together a dominant win over the Houston Rockets to now move officially to 5th in the Western Conference. Luka Doncic was absolutely sensational, making an MVP-like statement with his 32 first-half points, going 6 of 10 from downtown. Kyrie Irving closing the show as he does, 15 points in the fourth quarter, scoring 15 of his 24 points in that fourth quarter as the Dallas Mavericks hit a season-high 24 three-pointers in this game to absolutely destroy the Houston Rockets, who were on an 11-game winning streak themselves as they tried to continue to climb to that final 10th spot in the Western Conference play-in tournament. But the Mavericks were simply not having it. Now moving to 4-0 on their current 5-game road trip, with their final game of their season-long 5-game road trip in San Francisco on Tuesday night. Mavericks flying to San Francisco on Sunday night to be able to get there for Monday as they prepare for Stephen Curry and the Golden State Warriors. The Warriors now have won 4 straight games themselves after getting a win over the San Antonio Spurs on Easter night themselves. But this was about the Mavericks and what they were able to do against the Houston Rockets, a Rockets team that had seen Jalen Green averaging over 30 points per game over the last 11 games, as the Rockets were able to get themselves within a game of the 10th spot in the West. But the Mavericks came out absolutely dominating, especially in that first quarter. Luka Doncic setting the tone in the game in what was a back and forth early on first quarter between the Mavericks and the Rockets. The Mavericks eventually went on a 25-7 run to take a 30-17 lead with just under 3 minutes left in that first quarter, and it was pretty much over from there. Luka Doncic scored the final 12 points of that first quarter to give him 22 in the first period, knocking down 5 3-pointers as the Mavericks led by 12 at the end of one. And you could tell Luka Doncic was on one early, knocking down shots, whether it be on the bank, where the bank was open on Sunday night, and Luka Doncic getting his teammates involved early on. Dante Exum getting involved in the game. He was a perfect 5 of 5 from the field himself in this game, was Dante Exum, who continues his strong play. But Luka Doncic shaking Dylan Brooks, knocking down a 3-pointer on the left wing in that part of that scintillating first quarter that he had, as the Mavericks were able to get sensational play from him as he again continued to just hit a barrage of 3-pointers in that first quarter. And this is something that we continue to talk about when it comes to this Mavericks team. The fact that when they are knocking down shots and they're defending at a high level, this team is as dangerous in the NBA as any. And you saw that they made a concerted effort to give Jalen Green different looks. They even threw in some zone to try and throw off some of the looks for Jalen Green and for Amen Thompson, who's been playing well as of late over his last 10 games, averaging around 15, 16 points per game for the Rockets. But you saw for the Mavericks, it was a concerted effort, not only by their superstar and Luka Doncic to set the tone from a scoring standpoint, but also make things difficult on Jalen Green so he wasn't getting downhill and getting to the basket for easy buckets. So the Mavericks were absolutely sensational to start off in that first quarter, holding the Rockets to just 37.5% from the field. Jabari Smith had 8 points in the quarter, but Luka accounted for 33 of the Mavericks' 36 first quarter points with what he was able to do from a scoring and an assisting standpoint. You go back and you look at the first quarter numbers overall, as I mentioned, the 22 points that he also had 8 rebounds and 4 assists in the first quarter alone. Those are some of the good numbers for a guy in just a game alone. But Luka Doncic set the tone, going 8 of 11 from the field in that first quarter, and it was game on from there. And the Mavericks were able to take their cues from their superstar. And if you looked at the pregame footage, my man hit this crazy shot off the Rockets scoreboard, and you kind of had a feeling that once you saw that, I had predicted, I said, look, Luka going to go off for 50. He came up 3 points short of my own prediction by dropping the 47 points that he did. But nonetheless, that was when the Mavericks were able to take control in that first quarter, and they never really looked back from there. Even as you got into the second quarter, up by 12 to begin the period, they started off they held the Rockets to just 2 of 10 from the field, but they were able to get up to a 17-point lead with just 2.5 minutes left in the period. Luka Doncic again knocking down a barrage of three-pointers as the Mavericks were able to close the quarter on a 9-2 run to lead at halftime by 21 at 66-45. And for me, it was the variety of shot making that Luka Doncic did, whether it be hitting and ones on Dylan Brooks, continuously putting Jabari Smith in a blender where he used a series of footwork to be able to not only knock down step backs, you even saw it on Landale, putting him in a blender with the footwork, being able to utilize his creativity offensively to just make a variety of creative shots to be able to put the pressure on the Rockets defensively time and time again throughout this game. And you've seen it throughout the course of his career, but he put the team on his back. He came in questionable coming into the game as he was dealing with some knee soreness, of course, having them won the couple of games that they did against the Sacramento Kings. But Luka Doncic was able to go. He got to the arena a little bit earlier on than usual to get his pre-work in, to be able to give himself a chance to go. And he went hard for the Mavericks on that Sunday night, taking out the Houston Rockets. Let's take a quick break here on Inside the Mavs. Let's hear from today's sponsor of our video and our podcast, and let's hear from Aura. Today's video is brought to you by Aura. Do a Google search on your name and email address to see how much information comes up about you. I was devastated by the amount of information that I could be seeing searching my name and profile, and I knew then I needed to be protected for not just myself, but also for my family. Data brokers sell your information to scammers, spammers, and anyone else who may want to target you. Your full name, email, home address, health records, your relatives, it's all out there. That's why I've been using Aura, the sponsor of today's video. Aura shows me which data brokers are selling my information and automatically submits opt-out requests for me. Cleaning up my information not only helps reduce the amount of spam I get, but it protects me from hackers who could use this information to help them access my social media accounts, bank accounts, and other sensitive information. Aura also does so much more to protect me and my family from online threats that I can't see. It's really easy to set up, so I don't have to download several different apps to get things like antivirus, VPN, password management, parental controls, identity theft insurance, and more. I get everything at one affordable price. You may already have one of these tools already, but not having Aura is like locking the front door and leaving the back door wide open. Aura is always on, doing the hard work to protect me and my family so I can focus on other tasks with peace of mind. I value my privacy and I value yours. You can go to aura.com/Kevin Gray to start your 2-week free trial. Please see the link in the description. Back here on Inside the Mavs, thank you again to hanging out with us through our break with our sponsor and hearing from Aura today as the Mavericks get the 125-107 win over the Houston Rockets, their 7th consecutive win, now having won 11 of their last 12 games, officially taking over the 5th spot in the Western Conference after the New Orleans Pelicans fell to the Boston Celtics on Saturday. The Mavericks, with a better division record and conference record right now, are at 5th spot in the Western Conference as they continue to climb during the final portion of the regular season. But it was Luka Doncic who dominated and sent an MVP statement to the rest of the league with his 47 points, announcing themselves officially as the team that no one wants to see in the Western Conference playoffs, because the way that Luka was able to dominate through the first 3 quarters, Kyrie Irving was able to close in the final quarter with the 15 points that he had. Luka and Kyrie combining on this night for 71 points, with Luka's 47 and Kyrie Irving's 24, as the Mavericks had 4 guys in double figures. PJ Washington, another strong game for him with 12 points, was a plus 16 as well. His defense continues to play well for the Mavericks, had 6 rebounds in the game as well. Dante Exum was a perfect 5 of 5 from the field, 3 of 3 from downtown. He had 13 points. Obviously, the concern will be for Derek Lively, the second going forward, as he was not able to play in the second half due to a right lower leg injury. We will see what his status is for Tuesday's game against the Golden State Warriors. But this is a Mavericks team who, again, was led by their defense against the Houston Rockets, a team in Houston who had been top 10 in the NBA. In fact, number in the top 5, in terms of scoring, averaging over 120 points a game during their 11-game run, as the Houston Rockets have really been putting things together. We'll say, Kevin, the Rockets only had 3 wins against teams above 500, so maybe it was a little bit of a mirage. But at the same time, a team that was top 5 in scoring, a team that was also defending well, also on the defensive end, had really started to play with a lot of confidence. But the Mavericks took away that confidence early on in this game, led by the superstar in Luka Doncic. But it was the supporting cast and the defense, as I mentioned a little bit earlier. Mavericks throwing some different looks at the Houston Rockets, whether it be some zone looks, trying to get physical with Jalen Green to throw him off his game, because you knew coming into the game that the Rockets were going to have him as a focal point as the game went on. But the Mavericks took him out early, and he was really a non-factor in the game for the Rockets. So for the Mavericks, who used 18 points off of 12 forced turnovers against the Rockets, continue to play stellar defense. But when you get a recipe like you did against the Sacramento game, because let's back up for a second. This game against the Houston Rockets reminded me of that first game against the Sacramento Kings, where the Mavericks defensively were able to get things together as the game went on. And more importantly, they were able to knock down threes in that game. And you saw what that turned into, an over 30-point beatdown on the road against the Sacramento Kings. Similar in the way that the score went down as the game went on, but much different in the way that we got there. It was Luka Doncic setting the tone at the beginning of the game with his scoring, with his passing, with his rebounding, and really taking it to the Rockets offensively to be able to get other guys involved to ensure that he was making sure that this Mavericks team got out to a good start offensively. And then as the game went on, whether it be Tim Hardaway Jr. in the second half, Kyrie Irving and others knocking down shots. When you look at what Tim Hardaway Jr. was able to do, he went 3 of 6 from downtown. Obviously, Luka tying a career high with the 9 3-pointers that he had. PJ Washington continuing to show much more confidence from the 3-point line, going 3 of 5 from downtown himself. When this team is defending at a high level, and I sound like a broken record, but it's true because they're continuing to do it night in and night out. When this team defends at a high level and when they're knocking down threes, there aren't many teams in this league that can beat the Dallas Mavericks when they are on like this. And the Rockets found themselves falling to an avalanche of 3-pointers by the Dallas Mavericks. The 24 that they hit, tying a season high for the Mavericks in terms of the 3-pointers that they hit. The Mavericks beat the Rockets on Sunday night, of course, 125-107, snapping Houston's 11-game win streak. It's tied for the 4th longest opposing win streak Dallas has snapped in franchise history, as the Mavericks notched their 7th straight win, tying their longest streak this season. Again, the Mavericks, who had a 7-game winning streak, as they were able to beat teams like the Oklahoma City Thunder. We saw them beat the Phoenix Suns coming out of the All-Star break, continuing to absolutely dominate teams. As now, as you look at their last 25 games, a team now that's 18-7 in their last 25 games. We have a large enough sample size to look at the totality of how this team has continued to perform now over 25 games to really give you an idea of what the identity of this team is and how they will continue to utilize that identity going forward. The defense in this game, led by Daniel Gafford, who had 5 block shots, a top 10 shot blocker in this league, continuing to fortify the middle of this defense for the Mavericks. The point of attack defense when it comes to either PJ Washington or Derrick Jones Jr., providing you a level of athleticism and length in the backcourt to be able to get after the best offensive players for the opposing team night in and night out. And then when you have Luka and Kyrie leading you in terms of your offensive charge, and two guys that have learned how to play off of one another, how to go tit for tat when one guy is going and the other one being able to close like you saw in the game against the Rockets. There aren't many weaknesses. I can't believe I'm saying this. There aren't many weaknesses right now when you look at the Mavericks. And that to me is a true indicator of a team that's peaking at the right time and playing with a championship type of form that you want to see going forward for the rest of the regular season and as they get ready for the playoffs. That this team is clicking on all cylinders in this game. Yes, they have 14 turnovers, but they were able to get themselves some opportunities in the fast break with 16 fast break points. They were able to score 38 points in the paint, but it was more so about being able to knock down a bunch of three-pointers. So for the Mavericks continuing this incredible run that they're on right now, they had already secured an over 500 road trip after their win against Utah and, of course, sweeping the baseball series against the Sacramento Kings. This is icing on the cake where not only you fortify your divisional record by taking out the Houston Rockets, you continue to strengthen your conference record as you move toward and look at the standings when it comes to the Western Conference playoffs. Now that you've moved up to 5th with New Orleans there in 6th, obviously with Sacramento and the Phoenix Suns fighting it out for that play-in situation, you feel really good about your chances if you're the Mavericks. And it'll be interesting to see what they do on Tuesday against the Golden State Warriors. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, Luka Doncic came into the game questionable, was a game-time decision with the knee soreness that he was dealing with. There were some questions on whether or not he would actually sit in the game on Sunday against Houston to maybe get ready for the game on Tuesday against the Golden State Warriors, because at some point, yes, I know we're coming down the stretch and every single win is important, but Luka Doncic has been playing at an unbelievable MVP-like level, and they will have to find at some point a game for him to be able to rest, to be able to have him ready to go by the time we get to the end of the regular season and end of the playoffs. But he made sure that he was going to bring the offensive fight early and often in this game against the Houston Rockets, and that's exactly what he did. As we go through the second half, as we mentioned, they were up by 21 at the end of the first half. Obviously, you look at that second quarter and what they were able to do. PJ Washington knocking down three. Dante Exum with a beautiful give and go to Dante Exum, who continues, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, his strong play. Derek Lively. This is one of my favorite plays of the game, and I'll get to obviously what was the play of the game for the Dallas Mavericks. But one of my favorite plays of the game, it got the Mavericks up by 18 with about a minute and a half left in the second quarter. Derek Lively blocks an Amen Thompson dunk attempt, leads to a Kyrie Irving transition three-pointer on the other end. And that, again, is just another great example of how this team is utilizing their defense to turn into offense and the athleticism to be able to finish plays on the defensive end and then get out in transition and to turn teams over and finish on the other end. Obviously, Luka Doncic hitting that Dirk one-legged fadeaway for the hoop and the harm on Dillon Brooks. I got in the 32 points as him and Dillon Brooks were doing a little bit of chirping as the game went on. But those are some of the signature plays that you saw throughout the course of the game. And then, of course, as we get to what happened in the third quarter, where Luka Doncic was able to hit this insanely ridiculous one-hand, underhand 20-footer on Jabari Smith to give the Mavericks what was a 25-point lead at the time. It was reminiscent of the shot that he hit the game winner against Memphis that one time. Remember, they had those gold and white uniforms that they were wearing to be able to win that game. But this one was just simply incredible. Obviously, Luka Doncic in that game winner against Memphis, leaning in, throwing in the one-handed floater from the three-point line to win that game. But obviously, this shot, the underhand 20-foot floater that he had over Jabari Smith, was just simply sensational. And honestly, look, I've run out of superlatives to describe Luka Doncic. There's a couple of numbers that I'll get to here a little bit later on that just illustrate why Luka Doncic is the league's MVP based on what he's been doing from a production standpoint, because he was absolutely fantastic in this game. Luka Doncic having another 15 points in that third quarter, 4 rebounds, hitting another 3 threes as he scored 15 of the Mavericks' first 25 points of that third quarter as he continued to knock down 3 after 3 after 3. And then, of course, as we got to the fourth quarter, it was really all over from there as Kyrie Irving scored 15 points in that fourth quarter. The Mavericks started 5 of 5 from downtown, 7 of 7 from the field. In a game where they led by as many as 29 points, the Rockets simply had no answer for the Dallas Mavericks on Sunday. Jabari Smith, had 28 points, but was a negative 22 in the game. And I just love the game plan that they utilized against Jalen Green to throw different looks at him, as we mentioned a little bit earlier, some zone coverage to try to figure out ways to neutralize the effectiveness of Green. But for Luka, this was an MVP statement game. Yeah, I know Nikola Jokic had a monster triple-double against the Cleveland Cavaliers in their win on Sunday, but this was about Luka continuing to put his team on his back, playing through injury, and giving you one of the best performances of the season. This is aside from the fact that he had 50 points on Christmas Day, had 73 points against the Atlanta Hawks. This 47 points and the 9 threes and the variety at which he was able to make shots and really put on the full offensive display and repertoire really was fantastic. In this game, as I mentioned, Luka Doncic going 9 of 16 from deep against the Houston Rockets, tying the single season franchise record with most threes in a season. He's now got 257 threes on the season. The only other player with more threes made this year in the NBA is the guy he'll see on Tuesday night in Stephen Curry, who leads the NBA in three-pointers made this year. But Luka, again, just to illustrate for you what kind of fantastic night he had, Doncic, and again, this coming from Mass PR because these numbers are simply incredible. Doncic led all players with 22 points, obviously going 8 of 11 from the field, with 8 rebounds and 4 assists in the first quarter against Houston. It marked the first time in the play-by-play era that anyone had at least 22 points, 8 rebounds, and 4 assists in a quarter, according to Basketball Reference. Again, simply putting into perspective, while Luka Doncic has made a serious push, and for my money, the league's MVP, one number to illustrate that is the number 35. You say, Kevin, what number among the dizzying amount of numbers would 35 possibly mean? Luka Doncic leads the NBA this season when leading the most games, leading a team in points, rebounds, and assists. He's done that 35 times, leading the Mavericks in points, rebounds, and assists. The only other players to do and have that in more games in a single season, Russell Westbrook, who had 49 such games back in the 2016-2017 season, Nikola Jokic, who did it 39 times in the 21-22 season, and Wilt Chamberlain, who did it in the 65-66 season, where he did it 37 times. Do you know what all of those 3 players have in common? They all won the league's MVP that particular season. So if you're looking for a particular stat line that gives you indication the most games leading the team in points, rebounds, and assists, Luka Doncic has done it 35 times, more than any other player in the NBA this year. And the only other 3 guys to have ever done that and do it more times in the NBA season, each won the league's MVP. For my money, based on what he's doing, and that is what's most important now about what this stretch means for the Mavericks. Having won 11 of 12 games, having won 7 straight, as I mentioned, 18-7 in their last 25 games, means that they're winning, and that means that the eye-popping numbers where Luka's averaging 34, 9-9 on the season gets that much more magnified, and the national media and the conversation has to shift its focus to what Luka Doncic is doing on the floor night in and night out to really give you a great picture and window into why, Luka Doncic right now is the NBA's MVP. Again, Nikola Jokic, spectacular season. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander hit the game winner on the road over the New York Knicks as he continues to have a fabulous season for the Oklahoma City Thunder. But when you look at a game-to-game basis and the number that I illustrated earlier in the first quarter where Luka Doncic accounted for 33 of the 36 points that the Mavericks had, whether it be scoring or assisting on 33 of those 36 points, again illustrates to you just the value and the contributing to winning that Luka Doncic does for this Mavericks team every single time he steps onto the floor. The Mavericks also now, by the way, 13-1 when Daniel Gafford starts in the lineup for the Mavericks. Daniel Gafford having 5 blocks in this game was a plus 13 with the 6 points that he had going 3 of 4 from the field. So just again, some more numbers to illustrate the adjustments that Jason Kidd and the staff have made, and more importantly, the execution that you're seeing from this team on a night-to-night basis. And they are winning in a variety of ways, whether they're bombing away from the three-point line or they're dominating on the glass with Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford, when they're winning games, when it gets mucked up and they're able to have to win with their defense. This is a team that profiles as one that, yes, no one wants to see in the NBA playoffs, but more importantly, a team that continues to give you championship vibe. Yeah, championship vibe. A team that's the best in the NBA in the clutch, 21-8 in the clutch this year, best record in the league during clutch time. A team that continues to win in a variety of ways, having won 7 straight games now at this point, winning on the road, beating good teams on the road, and a team that's peaking at the right time, given what they have had to do. This team and the Mavericks have been really in playoff mode since about the beginning of February, because they've had to turn it up to get themselves to a point where they continued their climb up the Western Conference standings, and climbing they have done, and they've done it extremely well. Now at the end of their game against Houston, 5th in the West right now, and having an eye toward possibly getting home court advantage in the first round of the West playoffs. It's going to be tough, as the Clippers were able to get a win, but at the same time on Easter. But at the same time, the Mavericks are just 2 games behind the Los Angeles Clippers for the 4th spot in the West. And if you had told me at the beginning of February that, Kevin, by the time the calendar turned from March to April, that the Mavericks would be just 2 games behind the Clippers for the 4th spot in the West, and they would be sitting comfortably right now in 5th spot with the tiebreaker over the Suns, over the Pelicans, over the Sacramento Kings as they get ready for the final stretch run of the season, I would have told you were crazy. But yet here we are, and that's where the Mavericks sit after they take out the Houston Rockets on Sunday, 125-107, an 18-point win. Again, a game that the Mavericks led by as many as 29 points, and they're doing it this time by knocking down a season-high 24 three-pointers, and Luka Doncic leading the charge for the Mavericks once again. They'll have the day off on Monday, and then they will take on the Golden State Warriors on Tuesday when they take on Stephen Curry and a Warriors team that's hot right now themselves, having won 4 straight. But your Mavericks own the longest winning streak in the NBA. They take over the mantle as the hottest team in the league, snapping the Rockets' 11-game winning streak. Mavericks are now streaking themselves at 7 straight with the longest winning streak in the NBA, and it doesn't look like they're slowing down anytime soon, thanks to Luka Doncic dropping 47 points, 12 rebounds, 7 assists, going 9 of 16 from deep, 18 of 30 overall from the field. Kyrie Irving pouring in another 24 points, 15 in that 4th quarter to seal it for the Mavericks. So the Mavericks now a season high 16 games above 500, rolling right now in the Western Conference. That'll do it for this episode of Inside the Mavs, exclusively here on YouTube. I'll be back on Monday with a full episode, audio and video podcast. You know what? I'll just throw this up on audio as well. Why not? So that you can listen to it. And I'll have another episode on Monday. And of course, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, every single week that you'll have new episodes of Inside the Mavs. Again, my name is Kevin Gray, Mavericks pre- and post-game host for 97.1 The Freak on the Dallas Mavericks Radio Network. This has been Inside the Mavs. Appreciate you joining me here on YouTube and on the podcast as well. Give it a 5-star rating and write a review for it while you're there. And I'll talk to you again this week here on Inside the Mavs. Talk to you later. Peace.